Hi there, I'm Lindsay Herman from Cake and Commerce, and today I'm going to show you how to make gluten-free pie crust and tart dough. We're going to start by mixing our dry ingredients in the bowl of a food processor. I have a little bit of that's light buckwheat flour. We have glutinous rice flour, 1 cup each, and then a 1/4 cup of tapioca starch and teff flour. Pinch of salt, got a couple tablespoons of sugar, and about a teaspoon of guar gum. Okay, we're just going to mix it all together in the food processor, just enough so that everything is uniform. Turn it off. Throw in our butter. So this is 4 ounces, which is 1 stick of butter. It's pretty cold. We want it to be cold. We just kind of want it to get chopped up and not melted or squished in with the dough. So we're working this until it looks kind of like a brownish cornmeal. So now that it looks kind of like cornmeal, I'm going to add in some buttermilk, a little over a 1/4 cup, and about a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. We don't want it to be overwhelmingly vanilla tasting, just a hint. So I'm going to throw the vanilla in with the buttermilk, and then while this is going, put it on a little angle, and I just pour the buttermilk in. Okay, so this doesn't form a really sticky dough. It's slightly dry, and we also don't want to work it just in the processor. We want to take it out and finish bringing it together on a little piece of parchment. The nice thing about this dough is it's very forgiving. If you don't put enough buttermilk in it, it works. If you put too much, it'll still work. It's a little harder to work with, but it'll still work. So what I like to do is just kind of knead it a little bit, make sure everything is evenly combined, but not overwork it. Because even though it's gluten-free and we're not going to form proteins that'll make the dough not very tender, we still don't want to overwork the dough. We want to make it as tender as possible and flaky as possible. Since I'm going to use this to make a pie dough, I'm going to sort of separate it out into 2 different pieces, vaguely roundish. And I'm going to flatten them because it'll make it easier to roll out later after they've had a chance to chill in the refrigerator. And because gluten-free doughs dry out pretty quickly, we're going to cover this with a little bit of plastic wrap. Let's see what I have left here. Or another piece of parchment. I just figure I'll use plastic because I've got it. So I'm not too concerned about the dough and having it be a perfect disc. I'm more concerned right now just having it chill down. I'm going to leave it in the refrigerator for at least 15 minutes, but I can leave it overnight at most and use it the next day. I can also put it in the freezer, and it lasts in the freezer for up to a month. I wouldn't go much beyond that because the quality does start going down a bit. So now the dough has been in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes, and I've pulled it out, and it's in its round, and I'm ready to roll. Now, because this dough is so delicate, we can't just take our rolling pin and roll it out. It'll stick. It makes kind of a mess. It's just not at all like regular pie dough. So we have another piece of parchment that I've recycled, and just place it over the top, and from the middle, just roll it out and turn it just so that it rolls out evenly. And we want to roll this pie dough out pretty thin. This dough has a tendency to be, I don't know, a little more toothsome than other pie doughs, so it should be a little thinner than what you're used to rolling out. I'd say, let me just take a peek here. I'd say that's probably about right, and that looks like a 1/4 inch or so. And I just want to make sure it's uniform and even. And we're going to want to keep it in this parchment. We're going to now put it in the refrigerator. It's going to make it a lot easier to handle. If we try to do what you can do with other pie doughs, which is like roll it up on your pan, it's just not going to work. It's going to fall apart. So we're going to leave it like this and then put it back in the refrigerator for another 15 minutes to let it cool down again. It'll make it a lot easier to handle when we finally do put it into either our tart shell or our pie tin. So the tart dough has now been in the refrigerator for another 15 minutes of rest and cooling, and it is ready to go. And we can use it either in a tart, just a lined tart which we bake off in the oven, or we can use it for a pie. So I'm going to show you first how to use it in a tart shell. And I'm just going to cut around and sort of neaten the edges up a little bit. This doesn't need to look particularly fabulous. The nice thing about using gluten-free dough is it's really forgiving. It's not like pie dough at all in that regard, though it still tastes great. The other thing that's really great about this dough is if you leave out the sugar in it, it doubles up as a savory tart shell. So you can make quiches and whatever else you like to make in a savory tart. Okay, so looks a little neater. Got our little tart pan. It doesn't need to be greased. This is kind of important. You don't want to grease it. There's so much butter in this dough, it just comes right off. So this is where it's kind of tricky. If it breaks, don't panic. It's totally fine with gluten-free dough. This stuff fixes itself. So we just kind of put it over the tin. We tuck it in a bit. And we're going to come back with a knife and trim the edges. So again, don't worry about perfection. Now, we are just going to lift this off. Kind of carefully. Okay, if you see, it's sort of messy. Don't worry. This tart was as messy, and by doing some patching, it just fixed it right up. And unlike in a regular pie, it's not going to get really tough when you patch it up. It doesn't really get hurt from overhandling, which is what happens with regular pie doughs. So I'm just kind of fixing the edges. The other thing about this dough is because there's no gluten in it, when you bake it, you don't need to blind bake it. It won't really lose its shape as it bakes. So I'm just trimming off the edges, just sort of cleaning it up a little bit. You can do this with your hands, or you can do it with a knife, or if you like to do something decorative, you can pull out one of those little dough cutters. I'm pretty low maintenance in this, and I like to cover up my edges with whipped cream or meringue, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. And it's pretty much ready to pop into the oven, just like this. The one thing I would recommend is just cut or use any kind of sharp edge and put a few little venting holes at the bottom. If you want your edges to be perfectly straight, you might want to blind bake it, which just entails putting a piece of parchment down and weighting it with either beans or pie weights. So I've rolled out my pie dough and I've pressed it into the sides, and at this point it's ready to go into the oven for 15 to 20 minutes as a tart shell. Or alternately, if you want to use it for pie dough, you leave a little dough hanging over the edges, put your filling in, your apples, your peaches, your blueberries, whatever, put a second crust over the top and pop it into the oven. If you're using it as a tart shell, it's going to be perfect for any kind of no-bake filling that you can imagine. And there it is, my gluten-free pie dough and tart dough, and I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you'll try it at home.